Good morning, happy Saturday. Kind of refreshing not to see some snow on the ground. Last week this time it was spitting ice on us here. We're in the Nutmeg State. Today we have about 51 degrees. It's kind of pleasantly warm. They call it rain. I'm going to call it more like a mist thing going on, so I came out anyway. It's not really that horrible out. And we're going to have a look around again. Two things that I have to be a little bit more aware of today. One, ticks, because it's in the 50s and they may be awake. I'll have to do a little check on the way out. And the other one is bears, because again, it's in the 50s, so bears are not the hibernators that we think they are. They will wake up when their stomachs start to growl. Okay, so we're shoreline at the beaver pond in this area. If you're out and you're looking this weekend like I am, then be bear aware as well, and bring bear mace in here, and it kind of gives the place a whole different feel. You know, mitigate any kind of a bear contact that you might have. See the other side. I haven't had any. I brought my drone with me today, but you never know. I've covered this. Cover your flank on that videos. And I'm going to get going, and we're going to look around today. Drones and fog are not good bedfellows. Go a little bit further in, maybe. And moisture in the air plays havoc with the GPS sensor on the drone. Current developments. It's not really a lot any more than it was last week, but any one of a number of different mishaps. See what we find and let the things develop. So, for obvious reasons, we're not going to do that because I don't really feel like trying to fish my drone out of this lovely little pond over here. That's a mix of freestanding water, ice, and probably very cold water at that. So yeah, we're going to forego the honor of that and kind of keep to the KISS principle today. And I doubt I'm going to run into any bears if I'm going to be like yapping to myself this loudly, because it's not like I'm going to come up on them randomly if they're paying attention. But anyway, so what's going on in the Bigfooting world? Michael Merchant made an interesting video yesterday, and he's kind of stuck in a mode where he's like bad-mouthing the Expedition Bigfoot folks, and he's not wrong, but they're not the only problem, I guess would be my expansion on his point. He kind of goes a little bit into the conferences and things too, and I was hitting on that, I think, too. And again, if conferences are your thing, you know, rather than berate me, there's this adulting thing we do called agreeing to disagree. I would rather spend my time out in the outdoors looking for stuff in the way of evidence and just being out in the outdoors in general, rather than in a conference center listening to the same people give the same speeches that they've probably been giving for the last 8 years. Sorry to call a spade, but that's basically what it is. And, you know, like I said last week, the ones that call themselves symposiums are just kind of silly. They're all the same thing, pretty much. And yeah, sadly, there's really no point served in having a conference if you have no evidence that actually leads us closer to a solution to the mystery here. And you know, that's my take on it anyway. If you don't have the monkey to show, then why have a conference about the same old, other than to line the pockets of the various speakers that make the rounds on the circuit? Which is basically exactly what the conference industry is, and it is a cottage industry of the subject. Sorry, my camera's getting wet. I'm hoping it will behave. But yeah, that's how I feel about this. Beyond that, you have it's almost like if you look at it from a voting standpoint, you got the red states, the blue states, and then you have the battleground states, which is, you got deer poo right there. And like on a platform like Facebook, you have the far end groups of opposing belief. You have, I mean, the obvious adversarial extremes. You have the Zorthites, the freaking Dr. Johnson cult members. I mean, it is a cult. Don't tell me it's not. It is. And you have, you know, these are the people that are believing whatever the hell Johnson spews out of his nonsensical mouth on a given day. And on the other far right, you have groups like the Coalition that are, you know, they claim to be agnostic on some level. They claim to be, you know, not overly skeptical, but even though there are believers in the group, the group is led by Skofniks. It is. Strufy can deny that all he wants. He is incorrect. I'll be nice and say incorrect. I won't attack his sincerity. I will just attack the cut of his jib, so to speak. But, you know, these are the opposing groups. Then you have the battleground groups. Hold on for a second. I'm going to take a quick break because I want to get a shot right here. We're back. Then you have the battleground groups that are the ones where you have the people pushing whatever narrative, and then you have the people who push back who are more level-headed. And you have the groups that are more level-headed, and they have the occasional intrusion by one of these I'll be nice and call them wishful thinkers. Some of them are just straight up, I hate to use the word woo-tard, but if it applies, it applies. I mean, and this comes in varying degrees. You've got the people that just, you know, they want to go down the woo rabbit hole, and, you know, they cloak and they mind speak and all that. Well, if you have proof of this, then by all means share with the class. Because the bad news is I actually have seen these things relatively close in broad daylight, and I have not experienced that behavior. So I don't have any testimony to offer that's going to conclude that that kind of thing exists. Kind of leads me to segue into a particular peeve of mine when it comes to the wooishness of things. And that is, you can disagree with me all that you would like. Orbs are complete and utter bullshit. They don't exist, and your fuzzy little freaking bug-related lighting effect is basically that. Accept it. It is. There's the other beaver nest over there, Beaver Lodge. You can claim otherwise, you're wrong. Until somebody actually, I mean, here's the thing. People make assumption based on conjecture, and this is where this theory breaks down, and breaks down incorrectly. Years ago, I want to say the original credit goes to Matt Moneymaker, who raised the theory of wood knocks. And this has been repetitively reported upon on the interwebs. And as a result, that is now accepted Bigfoot canon among the faithful. Yet nobody that I'm aware of has ever actually come across a photo, a video, or anything of that sort where you have a monkey-looking person with a big friggin' stick or like increment whacking on another stick to make noise for whatever reason. All these years later, it's conjecture. And there's any one of a number of routine forest background noises that people mistake for wood knocking type sounds. In a different stretch of woods not so far from here, there's a hunting club not far off, and in the distance you will hear what is actually just gunfire. And through being in those woods for a period of time, I can tell you the difference between a handgun, a shotgun, and a long gun, because of the subtle difference in the sound that it makes. But it ain't a wood knock. When it's very cold in the winter, we've covered wood pops before, which is the softer wood inside a tree basically expanding and contracting as the temperature gets colder and warmer, and it makes a sound very, very similar to what people purport is a wood knock. But this is a measurable, scientifically known phenomenon. And it ain't Bigfoot doing it. It's called the cold. Then you get into vocalizations. There are a myriad of vocalizations that can be produced by routine background animals, such as coyotes, bobcat, and the like, fisher cats. You know, and automatically people jump to, that's Bigfoot. Or the fun one. That's Bigfoot mimicking the animal in question, because God forbid you actually just have the animal out there doing this. That is the epitome, like it or not, folks, of wishful thinking. And I know this is discouraging, but I mean, you have to, when I mention all the things that are not, the point that I drive at is this. All those things that are not narrow the focus on what might be. This is what I refer to as the white noise. I mean, examples are, there's more examples than you can pick out of your butt after a bad burrito night. Bad analogy, but you get the gist. There's a picture of a stump that I've been aware of since at least 2005. You do the math on that, it's been around for a couple of years. It keeps coming back around. It has been overanalyzed, misanalyzed, etc., over and over and over, more than possibly possible, where people, they desperately want it to be a Bigfoot. It's a fucking stump, people. You've had people give like these lovely, charming explanations that it's Bigfoot, but he can morph into rocks and stones and like, you know, how far do you want to stretch your imagination to justify something that is not? Again, I've seen them, and what I saw was a brown furred, 6.5 foot tall, long armed, slightly larger in the chestal region than a human looking, humanoidish fusion somewhere between primitive, apish, humanoid, and human-ish. But the point being, it was not, it didn't mind speak, it didn't freaking cloak, it jumped up and it fucking ran away. And kicked up a lot of leaf litter on the ground in the undergrowth when it did it. So, you know, sorry, not sorry, until somebody can convince me of the woo by way of an actual bit of physical, real evidence, you're full of it. And every now and then you get a response to something like that with, yeah, but that's just because you don't believe. And I usually at that point kind of give up any kind of a meaningful conversations possibility, and I just respond with something like, you know what? It's not the Easter Bunny. It's not going to die if you don't believe in it. Empirically speaking, the creature that is known as Bigfoot, that is the epicenter of this mystery, is either there or it's not. Empirically, it is there or it is not. It's that simple. And with all the people out there that are, you know, throwing out all this charming conjecture that leads nowhere, you add to white noise, and this is why it's probably never going to get solved, if I'm being depressing and brutally honest. Because you have stupid people out on the internet that believe in stupid shit, number one. And number two, you have the exploitation crowd. You have the Isdals. You have the Polites. You have the Zorth cult. You have, if he's even worthy of the mention, you have the Todd Standings and their little freaking digitally enhanced Muppets that are all him. And to a disagreement I had the other week in one of the battleground groups on Facebook, I don't have to prove that he's a fraud. It's already been proven, by and large. It's been done. If you want to hold out hope and believe in the bullshit of hoaxers, knock yourself out. You're going down a rabbit hole from which there's a depressing return. But in the end, that will be on you. You know, I don't need to wipe your tears when you realize that you were taken. And don't tell me it doesn't happen, because I can point to the experience of a very well-known Bigfooter out there. Fairly well-respected, too, who went through such a journey back before 2010 with a well-known hoaxer. Before another well-known hoaxer came to prominence. And yes, we are discussing the Freezer Monkey incident of 2008. people do get distraught when they get taken, but and then they turn around and try to exploit the whole thing for reasons that are not necessarily scummy, but I guess in this one case, the guy wrote a book about it, and that was his catharsis. I mean, I get that. I get that. On the other hand, if he hears this video and he's offended by my talking about this, frankly, all I'm going to say to him is tough shit. I have a right to my opinion too, and if you don't like it, don't listen to things. If you're that thin-skinned like so many other of my alleged former friends in this community are, I'll give you the fuck you in advance and you can be on your way. I've talked in previous videos about the people who, you know, they're loyal to their friends, which on one level is a positive thing, give or take, depending on context. But if you are true and blue to this subject and you know of a hoax and, God forbid, one of your friends is involved in said hoax and you look the other way, then knowing it was a hoax and not speaking up, how are you then any better? Because your silence reinforces the bullshit that this person who's your buddy is legitimate when they're not. And right now, if you took a look at any of the more well-known Bigfooters out there that go to conferences, podcasts, whatever, what have you, and you held them to the light of scrutiny, and I'll be generous when I say this, 98% of them and their credibility will fall flat on its face because they exactly fall into that category in one way, shape, or another. Wes Germer had his fall. Isdall initially came out and seemed interesting because he seemed like the no BS kind of guy. And I honestly, when I first encountered him, gave him enough of the benefit of the doubt to at least let him evolve into what he was going to evolve into. I didn't jump on his band. I didn't jump against his bandwagon right straight away. I'm like, okay, I'll listen in. Every now and then you'll have somebody new come on the scene that's like a bright, you know, kind of a bright light of hope, when he was not that. He aligned himself with Paulides and Carpenter and a bunch of other bullshit artists and basically showed his true colors and gave his, you know, his effing science rant. And like, okay, we're done. You're kind of a joke. And if you don't like the cut of my jib and my whopping, what are my subscriber base right now? Maybe like 130 some odd people. The fact that I don't know is indicative of the fact I don't obsess on it. Because, again, this for me is a mystery and a hobby. It's not my livelihood. I don't have some emotional investment in an online persona that I have to viciously defend when somebody like calls me out about it. If you think I'm completely full of shit and wrong about the woo and such, you know, you have every First Amendment-based right to call me out on it and say I'm full of shit. I have every right to respond, and probably not in the most friendly fashion, but you have every right to say so and voice that opinion. I doubt you'll offend me that much. But moving on to other subjects, because I think we've covered this enough. The white noise needs to get reduced, in my opinion. So for all the people out there chasing your tail, you're wasting your time and whatever. Have fun. And yes, I say that with sarcasm and condescension. If it offends you, boo-hoo. I dare say that I have like 3 steadfast fans in the entire community. And the reason why they are steadfast is because I have not wavered in my attitude on this kind of stuff. So. And to some of the more well-known people out there that I've touched on today without naming names, but I think if you listen in, you'll realize that I am talking about you. You want to call me out about this, I'll happily have a civil debate with you about this. That's some kind of hawk, I believe. Can't see where he is, but we had a red tail over there before. Maybe it's him. I'm not an expert in field sounds coming from raptors. But again, if you're offended by my opinion and you want to call me out about it, I'm not going to be offended by that. But I will have that debate. And again, if you do, what I'm going to say is that is your bread and butter, basically, effort to defend your persona, and you know it. But moving on to future plans, I am of the hope that with the weather getting warmer, because today we don't have like snow and all this loveliness out here, it makes things a little bit easier to plan to get back north, to head further west, and at that juncture get into some new areas and generate some new potential patterns of activity. The Vermont location last year was quiet for the most part. There were a couple of times when things were kind of maybe-ish, but the hope that I had that I got into an area where I thought a certain group of potential activity generators, shall we call them, would be in there. It's hard to say because the undergrowth in this particular area is so goddamn thick. And if you refer to some of the videos I've made of that, you can see it is that thick. You had to go into certain parts of it by way of just accepting the fact you're getting your feet wet and going in by way of just wading through a stream, because you can't navigate in a straight line through that undergrowth because there's too much deadfall, there's too much, I mean, not even just laurel, just downed leafy shit, for lack of a better word. As bad as Manitow, but different from Manitow, I guess is the way I would describe that. Which is another wonderfully remote area, but for the amount of logistical trouble it is to get in and out of Manitow, and it is a lot, I've not had activity in there. It's almost like the monkey folk are aware of the fact that it's that much of a pain in the ass to go in there, and there's really no reward for putting yourself through that shit. So I don't know what to tell you there. So we're going to get back up there. We are going to, I don't know if I've mentioned this, in the early part of May, part of that effort's going to be a 3-day backpacking trip, hopefully with other members of the network. And we're going to cover a lot of ground in an effort to try to retrace our steps and come across some kind of evidence that this particular group is still out there, or their elusive possible relative that lurks further to the northeast of where I usually have found them. I would like to do some exploration along the Nuclear Lake area, because there is, believe it or not, a bit of folklore coming out of there. Just if for no other reason, my own curiosity. There's limited ways to access that from where I live, and the last time I tried to get out there, they were doing road work, and there was a point where I'd have to like just be completely guessing my way back, and I at the time decided it wasn't worth the risk of getting lost and such. So that's still on my to-do list. And then this is going to tick off some people. I would like to make a journey to the Bridgewater Triangle on a debunking mission, because there's a certain group I'm aware of, and they absolutely seemingly obsess on the Bridgewater Triangle, where you have a bit of a small woods south of Boston, which is the least likely kind of habitat for these things ever. And yeah, the group is welcome to disagree with my thought on that, but I'm going to go there and probably find exactly butt kiss and not be surprised. But, you know, you can't really say things with authority unless you actually go and see for yourself. There is that part of it. And there's a couple of places along the way in that general neck of the woods I would like to also kind of go and see and kind of wrap my mind around as well. We'll be doing that hopefully in the next few weeks if the weather continues to improve. Right now we're in a phase of, like, God forbid it doesn't rain on a Saturday for the first time in probably 2 months. Or like last week we had the ice spitting episode. I don't know what that was. But that's what's on tap for the next few weeks. Once we get deeper into the summer, that 3-day trip is going to be one of 2 or 3 I'm planning, where I'm going to take a 3-day period and I'm just going to cover a huge swath of the southern, then the middle, then the northern part of my greater Vermont area. And I might make a couple of runs up to the Adirondacks if that works out too. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to take a segment break at this point and possibly move to another area not far from here and pick up from there. Okay, I think you can tell by the difference in the look of the terrain, we're in a different area now, and kind of tracking along the stream, trying to find a jumpable spot to get to the area that I've been told is closed to the public, which is basically over through that stuff over there. And I think the trail has either run out or I have to figure out where it went from here. Does it go uphill? Because I don't want it to go uphill. I want to follow the stream. Or is this just an opening in the trees? I'm going to go with the opening in the trees. But one that gets me around what I don't want to get drenched by. But anyway, as you can see, this is a little bit more primeval foresty looking. Kind of more hilly too. So where did we leave off? I kind of covered a little ground to get in here, but this will more or less accomplish my desired mission for the day, to see if there is a jumpable spot here. Although it's one of those where you're going to probably have to jump 2 spots, because it kind of splits. You ought to ultimately get over to where that spot is. I don't know how obvious it is, but it looks like an opening in the trees over there. There's a wetland over there that probably is beyond the zone of their accursed logging, which they claim is necessary. I'm not going to get into the politics of that today. I guess we're just going to make this my wrap-up point, where we covered some philosophical ground today and covered some future plans in the next couple of weeks. And I guess that's where we're going to leave it. Like and subscribe as you see fit. I'll give the generic YouTuber's speech. And thanks for watching and listening, and we're going to call it here, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.